Hey, JC Troller. This is probably a bad idea, but I was sitting here working on stuff for the first time in a while. And I asked in Discord, a few of you around, so I thought I'd do a live stream. I got the question I've been kind of not waiting for, but dreading. No, not dreading. I don't know. It's a question I've been looking for. What's going on? What are you up to? Mainly because I meant to update everyone like in a podcast or live stream format, but then everyone kept noticing, and that was cool by me, and so I just kind of let it ride. But since someone finally asked in Discord where's the podcast and the stream at, I thought maybe I'd answer it, and I was planning to record a podcast tonight. But then I got to working on something I wanted to talk about for the podcast. And then while I was sitting here in my slightly inebriated state, I thought, why not ask if anyone on Discord is around, if they had any direct questions. And that would be like killing... Nah, I'm still probably going to have to do a podcast, but I don't know. It was just an idea. So here we are. How you doing? Is essentially what I'm asking. I am working on adding a value of a baseline calculation to the weekly database, and it never had one because I hate adding stuff to the weekly database because it's, as you can probably tell by the stream quality right now, terribly CPU intensive at this point. But yeah, that's what this is. It's not a Dynasty Grind stream. It's just a live stream. As you can tell by the slightly, I tried to change the format slightly just so it was different background and stuff. But at the same time, oh god, my camera isn't even in the right place anymore. Let's see if I can get myself situated, shall we? Yeah, at the same time, StreamYard had forgotten me. I had to re-sign in and ask for a code and all sorts of stuff, so it probably looks very different anyway. It's even got a dark mode now, so I'm seeing all your comments in dark mode for the first time. All your comments, I'm seeing your comment, JC Troller. So yeah, not a Dynasty Grind stream, just a hey, if anyone is around and has any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it right now while I'm working on stuff. I plan to do a podcast and probably a live stream where I explain myself more properly. But yeah, it just coincided with someone actually reached out for me to do some work that I actually think I can fit into my schedule. So I'm going to be doing that this week, whatever she sends it to me. And yeah, it just seemed like a day. I'm off today. I'm off tomorrow. So I had the space and the mental space to actually deal with it. And like I said, then I got involved in this weekly database, and I was like, man, it's going to be... I don't even know if I'm going to have the energy to actually do that podcast tonight by the time I get to it. I think I finally figured out this value of a baseline calculation, though. Can I still share a screen here? It probably won't show up very well, will it? It would be better than just my big old face. That's what I think. Share a screen. Not that one, because that's this one, not because it's illicit. Yeah, let's try that. There we go. That's what I'm working on. That's what I'm staring at right now while I talk to you. Hey, Tim. I never went anywhere, technically. Okay. Let's actually do some sort of a talk just in case anyone ever watches this back, which they won't, because you now need a premium account to actually announce things on Twitter, and I don't have that. I don't have $6 extra, Elon. Come on. And so no one will hear about it apart from the people in my Discord. But since those are the people I care about a lot, probably I should do an actual introduction. So here's what's going on. No, I can't. There's too much. Essentially, what I found is with my new work schedule, trying to cram in a season's worth of content. And you've got to remember, and you guys know, especially since you're all from the Discord, I hope you appreciate, I've basically been putting out an entire website's worth of content by myself, not for free. Lots of you guys subscribe to me, especially from the Discord. But essentially, even when I was at max subscriptions on Patreon, what I was paid was what I was paying out to basically get the stats that some of you are interested in. I don't think we need them. But if you want yards per route run, if you want some of the more popular stats, you got to be behind certain paywalls. And that's basically what most of that money went to, and also my water bill. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm not gonna say it didn't slightly eclipse that, but it was not enough to keep up with once I found a job that actually pays bills and leave a little extra at the bottom of it for the first time in 5 years or so. It was not worth risking that job by staying up till 4 a.m. to finish it all, to keep putting out that amount of content. And I'm not trying to oversell it, but you guys know what I've been doing, and parts of it you're interested in, parts of you aren't, which is perfectly valid. But I did everything from projections to weekly notes to in-depth analytical reviews. And granted, I'm sending some of that to DLF and repurposing it for Patreons. But like, I felt like I was basically putting out a smaller version, but I think as high quality as PFF by myself for the amount that over the threshold of what I was doing was paying my water bill. And frankly, I loved it. I'm not complaining about the money, to be real clear, but I could basically do it because I wasn't making enough money in my regular life. And so I just got to indulge in my hobby, the thing I enjoyed, hanging out with my friends, you guys, and doing the stuff that I really like to do. It was a little bit of analysis on data, but also just enjoying fantasy football. But with a job that actually pays the bills, and again, leaves a little extra in the tank, not a lot, I'm not rich, but a little extra. And the fact that I work at 6 a.m., I work 12-hour days, essentially I was exhausted. I'm normally exhausted and in a lot of pain. To burden myself with the fun stuff that I was doing, essentially for fun, and because I enjoyed it, was too much. It was just too much. I came to week 2 of the what happened this week, here are the trends to acknowledge, and it was literally 3 a.m. and I was and I had a good article. I knew I had points I hadn't seen anywhere else. And I published them on Patreon, but I also knew I had, because of my own failings, at least 2 hours worth of work to go back through it, make it hard-hitting sentences, make it clickbaitable sentences, make sure the players' names were spelled correctly, because that's a personal hurdle of mine. Spelling, punctuation, and grammar, I struggle with it. And so I always put in a couple of hours extra work to reread it backwards, to spell check every name. And it's not burdensome. It's frankly very easy work, but it does take time. And I realized I was going to be going to work on no sleep, which I've joked about before, which is fine when I was working some of these basically not paying rent type jobs. Because, you know, if I was tired and they didn't get the work from me that they should, I didn't care. Like, they weren't paying me enough anyway. But the job I have right now actually takes my energy and actually takes concentration a little bit. And I owe it because they actually pay me a very decent wage. And I didn't feel it was fair. I don't feel it's fair to take away from them when they're doing that for me. And I definitely didn't. I might have had enough in the tank to keep up with what I was doing before and keep this job. But I was already sacrificing a lot for my hobby because of the dream of it actually paying off. And I haven't been available to my family, not to get all deep. But since I've been doing this last 5 years, I am in here. This is where I sit. To get that done, I dynasty grinded for fun, and I was mostly what I was getting out of it is mostly I really enjoyed it, but I could tell myself the lie. I was trying to make it professionally, even if I joked about how I never would. Secretly, that's a justification, right? And once that is gone, once you realize that is gone, I couldn't justify it, and I was like, it's 3 a.m. I got to go to bed. And I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry about it, DLF. Not that they don't treat me fair or the amount they pay for the article isn't enough. It's just I couldn't justify it for the first time. And especially because in the back of my mind, I know I've been over-justifying it by taking away from my life and my family way too much for what I put into this hobby already. And coming to terms with that at the same time that the financial burden was somewhat lifted from actually making enough money at work. But I don't want to quit. I still enjoy fantasy football. I love my Patreon. I love my Patreons. I love my Discord. And I still do this stuff for fun. So what I did is I begged out of all weekly commitments. I told DLF I couldn't write this weekly. And part of it is, and what I told them, and it is true, it takes a lot out. I'm not someone who suffers from stress or anxiety or depression, don't get me wrong. But that last 2 hours of work, the panic of I have to make this publishable on basically the most popular Dynasty site, or I think the best Dynasty site on the internet as this thing of ours grows. I did put pressure on myself because I wanted to do good work, and I knew I couldn't get there with the time that I had. And that was weighing on me too. And I basically told him it's too much. It's burdening me in an emotional sense that I am panicking, I am saddened, I am upset that I can't meet a publishing standard of work for a hobby. And that also doesn't make sense. And I said, I don't want to leave. I don't want to not write for you guys, but I can't have a weekly deadline. I just can't. With the time, I work on average 55 hours a week for my current job. That's how I'm paying the bills. And it's finally actually paying the bills. So there's no more wiggle room. There's no more, I'm calling sick. I won't do that for this job. They don't deserve it, and I deserve to keep this job. So yeah, that's basically where I was at with DLF. So I told them I couldn't write it weekly, and they said, when you can write it, send it to us, and we'll probably as a one-off series. As always, DLF has been great, and always will be. It's a great site, great people involved, and they understood completely. And I told patrons I'm going to be trying to publish this weekly for you guys, because not that I don't try and hit a high quality standard for my Patreon, but I focus on the content, not the quality. If I get a spelling mistake on Patreon, I don't sweat it. It's my Patreon. If you don't like a guy who misspells something sometimes, there's like 50 of me and better out there, publishing this stuff for PFF or whatever. And you pay the extra money to DLF or PFF to get that quality. Perfectly understand. I'm not going to impose that level of restriction, because it does create this psychological burden on myself, because I struggle with spelling essentially, and it has an over-exaggerated effect on my sense of worth. And I just don't need it. So patrons, I'll publish good quality content, good quality content, but not good quality spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Occasionally it's going to be off, and most of my patrons seem to be fine with that. That's why they hang around, I guess. As long as the information's accurate and good, yeah, we're good. Essentially, and I can still keep doing it. The other thing that coincided, and it's kind of all happened at the same time that week, literally, was Zach told me that he had been offered by Russ, who was currently, but at that point he's in and out of the Dynasty grind, occasionally showing up, been offered to do a podcast for Fantasy Cares with Russ. And it would be on Wednesday. And could we move the Dynasty grind to another night? And with everything else going on in my head, me finally accepting I had to step away from regular scheduled content with DLF. I just can't keep up with it and keep their quality of pure quality. Not necessarily. I think my information is always good, but the quality, publishable level quality, I wasn't going to be able to meet. It just wasn't. It coincided, and so I told Zach, no, we won't do it on another night, because to start with, we'd already missed 2 weeks, essentially because of me, because those were days I work. Sometimes I work Wednesdays and Thursdays, sometimes I don't. Like this week, I'm not, because my schedule moves around through the week. And I said, I don't want to keep jerking you around on a week-to-week basis, and also, that's another burden for him to have to do 2 nights of streaming and other stuff, and that was in my head. But honestly, it just seemed like a natural stopping point. We already missed 2 weeks. As much as I liked it, it was just an excuse for us as friends to hang out and talk about the thing that we liked. And all of you that got involved was fantastic. You are our friends too. But that's why we were doing it. And since he had a better opportunity, and I was already stepping away from weekly commitment stuff because I can't keep up with it, it just seemed natural to say, no, let's not make it even more intense on our schedule. Let's you go do that with Russ. And by the way, follow Zach Reed at Tacit Assassin 13 or Russ Fisher Dynasty Outhouse to know when they go live. If you haven't seen it yet, I share it every time I see it, but I'm not on Twitter near as much as like I have been for the last 5 years, literally like every minute of the day, been available on that particular social media app or on Discord. I'm just not that available on them anymore. But when I am on them and I see that, I do share it. So go check out their live stream, because it's basically going to be a better version of the Dynasty Grind. You've got Zach, you've got Russ, the 2 stars from our show. Let's face it. And they're doing it for Fantasy Cats, which is much more worthy platform than just my YouTube channel, you know? So definitely check that out. And that would reduce the burden on me. It frees up any extra pressure it would have been on them doing that show on Wednesday. And also, I don't want to have a show competing with something that awesome. Every other show that's currently in the industry, yeah, I'll compete with them. None of them are that good, but that one's going to be great. I don't want to compete with that shit. So yeah, I just told him, you guys go ahead and do that on Wednesdays. We'll just stop pretending I'm going to be able to keep up with the Wednesday schedule, because the last 2 weeks I haven't even been able to. And that, to be clear, that was all me. I think Zach had a medical thing. His son was sick one night, but I already wasn't going to do it because I couldn't that night. And so the lack of shows those last few weeks, that was me. And it was going to keep happening, like with my article, just not being able to meet a deadline anywhere close to actionable information on a weekly basis. And the reason and that's led me to a whole bunch of other thoughts about the way I play Dynasty, and the fact that my in-season content was really to keep up with an industry that makes you think weekly content is of any use. I don't think so. And especially watching this season play out, as much as I'm getting right and wrong, or right eventually after it looks wrong for a second, Quentin Johnson, the more I realize, especially how we talked about my process and as it's evolved, I prepare for the season, make decisions with a 60-40 split towards the voluminous research I do before the season to new income for me information. That 40% you slowly adjust to how the season rolls out, but you don't want to go all in on week 1 or week 2. By week 6, yeah, I have to change my priors if they're different. But I also noticed a whole lot of those priors actually came out to be true by week 6 that weren't true by week 3. Again, that article series I wrote last year literally showed where the boundaries are, and this year it's proving true. And that by week 6, a lot of things I might have thought it was looking like I was wrong on, I'm back on being accurate. Not right and wrong, that's the wrong way to think of it. Accurate by week 6. So anyway, my way of playing Dynasty isn't that I'm not active weekly or that I don't think there's value in that, but I think you can do a vast majority of the work to understand the game, most of the rookie work in the off season, and then do that 60-40 split to new information as it comes in. I think waiver wire articles are useful. I think trade articles are useful. I think most of it is content for just thoughts and feelings. I don't think any of it is stuff I add to as much as I add to anything in terms of helpful Dynasty content. I don't know a lot of my Dynasty content in season, apart from maybe projections, which I'm trying to keep up with, but I can't really update more than once a week, are that actionable? I think they're filling the voice that the content machine has created for content in the fantasy industry these days. I think most of the stuff that I can be helpful with, I've already done that for you in the off season. It was already there. It was already on the Dynasty Grind. It's already in my spreadsheets for the season long, reflecting what's most likely to come in 2024. Not that it's all accurate and I already guessed it, as much as I've joked about that before, in the preseason, but I think I know as much as I can know about a season as it unravels. I was thinking about that with the projections this week. My projections have been over 50% accurate the last 3 weeks, which is actually down from the last 2 years. I'm normally around 57, 60% accurate by this week. So I'm a little lower, but that's because I'm not updating for injury news and people changing their rankings mid-season. And the more I think about it, the more I think the intensive war in accuracy in coefficient of variation, or the accuracy with your R-squared test, my ranks versus a PPR, all that stuff is mostly who can be most active in season in changing what they said a week, 2 days ago to reflect what's actually now more likely. And I don't think that's actually, especially from a Dynasty perspective, showing you are doing better. It's showing you can be more active in changing what you thought was going to happen. Whereas Dynasty is more about, I have to do it 3 weeks out. I have to do it 3 months out. I think that's a more effective way of playing Dynasty. And I'm less interested in playing that game in the content sense anyway. I'm more interested in reflecting on the season to improve the process. So instead of 54% accurate by week 6 without being that active, I want to be 57% in advance without being that active. And I think that's what I reflect in season how my process tries to improve. If that makes sense. It does in my head. Again, slightly inebriated. Anyway, so all that stuff came together. The Dynasty grind ended, and I plan to do a last stream the following Wednesday to explain it to all our wonderful regular commenters. And that was a week I worked. And I was like, I really have to allow myself not to feel that burden. Not that you all don't deserve it or nothing, but like I've been slogging myself to death for this stuff. Not for nothing. I've met a lot of people. I enjoy all of you. I enjoy all my friends in the industry, but I've been taking away from literally everything else in my life, and I need to get used to stopping doing that. And so, last week I planned to do a podcast. The week before I planned to do a podcast, but I'm allowing my life to overtake what I think I should do in the fantasy space instead of the other way around for the first time. And honestly, it feels fucking great. And not that I don't love you all, but I should love my life more. And again, it's not like a burnout thing. I was too mentally exhausted. It's just I have been plowing this thing like an idiot for way too long, and I need to allow myself to be sane, just more realistic, more sane. And so that's what I've been doing the last few weeks. Could I have done a little bit more? Yeah, honestly, but I've allowed myself a little more leeway than I probably will end up doing to beg off fantasy football to have a life. And eventually it will elastic band back, and I'll be a little bit more regular weekly. I'll do a bi-weekly podcast. I'll actually start publishing some thoughts on Patreon on a weekly basis instead of a bi-weekly basis. I'm sure I'll start doing a little bit more because honestly I do enjoy it and I miss it. But I've allowed myself a little extra leeway than I think I'll ultimately end up having. But again, the more space I give myself, the more I realize, as far as I have any value outside of you all, obviously really enjoy my commentary. I'm great. No, I don't really have any personality or entertainment value. I think I can recognize that. But as far as I have any value from an actual standpoint, I think most of it is in my longer term outlook and my improvements to my longer term outlook and my data collection, which I have been keeping up with. The weekly database, the weekly data collection is all there. I have been updating my ranks. I haven't been updating my rank sheet because I actually rarely do that in season, but I can start to do that a little bit more regularly as well. I did get a question about that on I saw in my DMs, and I have been trying to still respond to everyone. It's just not they ask, I answer, and then they check back 2 hours later to realize I responded within 30 seconds. Like, I'm not doing that no more, mainly because I'm not staring at my phone waiting for it. But I do respond as soon as I see it, and there's in the same way I always would have. So that's what's going on. I will get slightly more regular as time goes on, but I'm no longer putting myself on a weekly schedule just because fantasy is a weekly game. I play, and that's why I specialize in dynasty content. I think a longer term, even just a week or two, or waiting to week 6, like right now, to adjust your priors, is kind of the process I've been trying to develop anyway. I think any pretense to me giving input onto a weekly waiver wire ad, which I've done before because I was literally, again, putting out the content of the accurate and data-driven content of a fully funded, sponsored, high-quality website. But for a start, I was only doing it because that's what you do. You have weekly columns, you have weekly ads, and weekly adjustments to your takes. And I'm just not pretending that anymore. Partly because I don't think in Dynasty that's the way to play, and also because I don't think it's my strength. So why would I pretend just so I can feel like I'm part of the game? I'm hustling. I'm Dynasty grinding. I put in 10 hours of work in fantasy this today, and that was always true. I was always putting in 10 hours of work for the last 5 years. Fantasy and dynasty content to little effect on the industry, obviously. But some people enjoyed it, and I appreciate that, and that was more than enough to keep me going. I've learned video editing for goodness sake, as just a guy who likes playing fantasy. That's a weird skill set to have actually picked up. I'm not trying to be an influencer or a YouTuber, and yet I had all this technology downloaded on my PC, and I still have it. And I've developed certain level of video editing skills. With someone who doesn't want to be a YouTuber or an influencer, that's actually a weird skill set to have picked up just so I could continue to put more effort into fantasy. But anyway, one of those bizarre thoughts. If anyone has any specific questions, that would probably be better than me babbling on. But that's what's going on. The Dynasty Grind has ended because it's been improved upon and taken to Fantasy Cares with Zach and Russ. Go check them out if you have not. You will be inspired and wonder why you ever checked out the Dynasty Grind. They're doing fantastic work as always. And they were, you will see, if you didn't already know, the highlights of that show. It was not me. And so vastly improved version of it. Please make sure you check it out if you haven't. I will still do my off-season stuff. I'll still make my databases, and I'm still going to be making some content, but there's not going to be a weekly scheduled content at all. Seasonal content, I will make sure to breakout research, because I do it for myself anyway, and let you all know. I still talk on Discord. I still post on Patreon. I don't know how often, if ever, I will make videos again, because honestly, I don't know what they're all talking about. Making YouTube videos fucking sucks. Being on camera fucking sucks. Live streaming's okay because you're just talking like I am to you guys, and I actually enjoy talking to you guys. But making videos sucks. It feels ridiculous. You have to postpone this sense of self, which is in any way reasonable, to talk to a camera. Like I hate it. Honestly, I do not like it. But videos are useful for some things. I really like the series that is least clicked on YouTube, which is a how-to series. It's just 3 to 5 minute videos on literally the functions of Excel that I use and how I apply them to fantasy. Like every time I get an actual question, which is like a skills question, I'm like, this 3-minute video, I do this over and over again to produce that result you're trying to produce in 100 different contexts. It's not that hard. It's a very simple function, but you don't know it until you've learned it or been pointed out that it can be used in that sense. So yeah, videos are still useful, but I don't particularly like making them in terms of regular YouTube videos. So I don't think I'll try to keep up with that unless I find something in particular that would require that format, but I'm not doing it to expand my channel or some such tripe. I'm mostly trying to still provide value to the patrons I have left, because a lot left, because the pretend content I was putting out apparently was the value to them, which is fine, obviously. But I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I've refunded a few people because I told them, like, I'm not doing that anymore. That's why I signed up. No problem. Here's your $1 back. Or in some cases, a yearly subscription. Perfectly fine. And reasonable. Happy to do that for you guys, too. Let me know. But I'm not putting myself on that weekly schedule just because that's what a grinder does. I was doing it because it was fun and I had the time if I ignored the fact I was taking it away from my life and my family, which I did. But beyond that, I don't think what I add, if I add anything for you guys, actually comes out in that weekly content. I really don't think it is. More and more scrolling Twitter, and especially seeing the receipts and victory laps, I'm like, if you are paying attention to my content, you know where I'm right and wrong. If you need me to grandstand those, I'm not your guy. There's a whole bunch of people on Twitter claiming, look how right I was about this guy that I had ranked as a wide receiver 3, that everyone had ranked as the wide receiver 3, but you don't get that in the tweet. I'm just saying I got it right. And so this is grandstand. And no hate. Like that's what it requires these days. I'm just not interested in doing that. If you need to hear that, hey, looks like I'm getting Josh Downs right finally, then I'm not going to be the guy to grandstand the fact that actually paid off. Bateman is not useless in the NFL. That Zay Jones, even after I got him wrong first and then adjusted to get him more right because of other people's takes. And then this offseason, I was kind of a Zay Jones guy, and there's more in the tank. It's a lot of touchdown regression. But anyway, it's not Zay Jones, Zay Flowers. If you need to see that I was me and Zach and Russ were some of the few people talking about Brian Thomas. Not everyone had Brian Thomas ranked high. we had him ranked as wide receiver 3 above Mr. Odunze, and also talking about the limitations of Odunze. I'm not going to be the guy to grandstand those takes, either on Twitter or here. I kind of am right here, but that's as an example of the things I'm not going to do, which I guess is protesting too much. But yeah, I'm just not interested in doing that stuff. Rome Odunze is great. Everyone who liked him did really good work, and I think it'll pay off in the way Josh Downs has. He's not a terrible player. He's actually a very good player. And I'm just not interested in playing that game, and I'm going to stop pretending to be for the sake of. It's like a keeping up appearances thing these days. I'm just not interested in it. Now I don't have to pretend I have to do that to make it, because I'm actually supporting my family a different way, and it's fine. So yeah, tiny rant over. I'm assuming there are better questions that would lead to more direct answers. I have a few right here. Tim Shady. It's very nice to see you again, sincerely. Where does Mahomes fall in your Dynasty QB rankings? Yeah, there's been a QB shakeup. I expected the QB position to bounce back a little this year. That's one of the things I definitely think I'm wrong on, because it sucked, and the tight end market has fallen as well. Not to two-dimensional take it, but I think it's a zig when they zag thing. You know what good QBs can do for us. It's what they've been doing the last few years when it goes the other way. If there's a window on tight ends or quarterbacks, I will try to exploit it in the opposite direction. However, I do not believe I have changed my quarterback rankings much at all. To actually answer your complete question, I still think I have him top 3. I can't remember what order I had, and I've got this database open right now, so I don't think you can be able to see it. I think I had Hurts number 1 last time I updated because he was misvalued in that top 3, and then Mahomes and then Allen. But it's all very tight 3. You got to understand, and I wouldn't change it based on what's happened this season. If you're talking on a redress standard, that's more of a weekly take. Check out the projections. Good question. Ryan Kennedy, been a long time, sincerely. One of the first fantasy podcasts I watched years ago. I miss you, man. Well, I appreciate that, Ryan. Again, I'm going to try and get more regular, but I'm not getting back to the weekly grind. And I'm also not quitting. This isn't an announcement of, I am out, I am make it, and therefore the industry sucks. No, I just have to be more realistic at how much time I should spend doing the content. I still do literally all the same spreadsheet grinding because I do it for myself. I always said that's why I started making content about it. It literally started because a lot of this stuff is really hard to find unless you want to combine it from 7 other websites, and it was a lot of legwork that I was doing anyway, so I just started offering it to people, and it turned into a whole other thing. I'm still doing that initial thing. I'm just drawing back all the other stuff that somehow in my head I decided I also should do, because I'm a content creator now, and so I should have weekly takes, and I should have very aggressive rankings, and I should do receipts, and I should be more active. I'll make projections. Why not? And no, it's still really hard to find all of this data in one place for free. So I still think that has value to people. Not therefore I will get paid, but in the sense that I still am offering. The minute fantasy websites or just Pro Football Reference wise up and actually let you download the tables, and it's not a broken export to CSV button. In fact, the minute Pro Football Reference wake up and realize no matter what they want, fantasy is what their business is based around, not football. Anyway, that will be gone. No, I won't have to do the work for myself, and I won't have to offer it to other people either, because if I had to get it from any of these websites could do it like instantly, but they think they can nickel and dime you for a little bit extra, so they don't. So I will continue to do it. Not that a lot of people, everyone's using it, but at least it's there. I would have enjoyed finding a sorcerer. Howdy, good to hear from you, Peter. Same to you, Alex. Thanks very much. JC Troller, first one in the comments, always. Hey, man, no worries. I completely get it. If you can't, you can't. Family over other stuff. Yeah, I'm not even saying I'm doing great at that. Like, I'm still in this office and my family's upstairs. And I was in this office while my family was upstairs. Well, actually, my wife went to go get my son. I thought I was going to pick him up, and it turned out I had an extra 30 minutes, and that's why this. So yeah, it's not like I'm choosing my family. It's just you take the pressure off yourself where you can. You need to. I'm getting to an age, I guess, where I need to recognize that I should do that. And the weekly content stuff, I honestly don't think I add too much of that diaspora in a meaningful sense. I don't think many do, despite how much content there is. And instead of being mad about that, why don't I just stop being part of that noise? I think that off-season stuff I do, honestly, I think it's valuable. Again, I think having data in one place without having to go to 7 different websites, if you enjoy data, not that it's the sole answer, but if you want answers, you should be able to see air yards and yards per route run in the same place without paying $100 a month or whatever it is. Yeah, I think hopefully that has value to some people. Oh, I got to change my banner because I said, hold on a second, I'm actually here. Anyway, but yeah, I'm gonna keep doing the things I actually think add to this space instead of what feels like a cold war of attrition. If you're not the biggest grinder, if you're not putting out 7 things that you don't particularly add value to, if you're not doing everything, even if you don't add value in every area, then it doesn't matter. You just have to be doing that too. That's the way I mean. Not that everyone else is doing that. I started to feel that way. Like, I don't think I add a particular amount of value with a new projections model. There are 17, and I've shown you all how you can build one of your own with your own preferences. And I think it's a really valuable exercise. But I think the value of it is doing the exercise, not in listening to how I did mine. Whereas a ranks projection model, a crowd-funded, here's everyone's ranks and here's what the average of the smart people think, I think that has value to all. That has value to me in Startsit, that has value to me and gauging how the value in Dynasty is moving in general. And it doesn't require saying, I have made a projection model. No, I'm just averaging what everyone thinks. And that actually has some value to me and hopefully you. I don't have to make weekly comments on who is rising in volume and who isn't, because weekly rises in volume are normally just abstract small sample things, and we all know that. Let's not pretend we don't. The real important things from my perspective, I think I went through in the last article series, the least read, by the way, because it was technical and actually of value in terms of what weak barriers are the most common, the most important to look for when you're trying to say, okay, this guy is definitely growing into this offense of a rookie. This guy definitely we should give up on because he doesn't pay off more times than he does with this level of volume at this point in his career, and so on and so forth. And we established those. We actually found them, which I feel pretty happy about. And we can just employ them now. Me continually reminding you every week, hey, remember last year we found out that this week's really important for this thing. Yeah, you should already know, or you weren't interested. Well, that's not how you play. Like the idea I should weekly remind or get paid to write an article where I tell you the thing that we already know is now. Like, come on. It's just it's a little bit of an ego exercise at that point for me. Sorry, I'm just, again, slightly inebriated, blabbering on. Noah Sanders, how's it going, buddy? I love your avatar. Good to hear you're not quitting. Yeah, I've got nothing to quit. Let's face it. It's not like I'm a full-time employee at DLF. They're just a very nice group of people who like some of the work I do, and give me a little bit of money for doing it when I can. My podcast is my own, although I sold it to DLF, but there's nothing to own. And I still play fantasy. So, like, what is there to quit? But I am quitting the parts that the demand on myself, the needless demand on myself for the weekly stuff. Again, I'm sorry for you all if I'm not. Again, the Dynasty Grind, I love doing it. I'm sorry it's not there anymore. But to be fair, it's been replaced by something I think is better. Yeah, the reason I was doing it was to hang out with you guys and my friends. And not that you guys aren't enough, but believe it or not, holding a live stream by yourself, it's not a burden. But you know what I mean? Like, I have to... Like, I could just be grinding the spreadsheet by myself quietly and it'd be fine. Right now, it's wonderful to talk to you all, but next week, I can't guarantee it will be. Maybe I'll just want to be by myself, because like you guys, sometimes you don't want to be talking to someone else, sometimes you don't want to be watching the Dynasty Grind or talking to a live streamer. In the same way, I am not a live streamer, I'm just a person doing Dynasty, and sometimes I just want to be here, sometimes I want to be upstairs, and by removing the burden of, I do this every week, because if I promise you guys I'm going to do that, I'm going to make that commitment, because that's just kind of how I am. And so instead, I'm stepping away from that commitment, saying I'm going to do what I can, but I'm not promising to be there doing a live stream every week. I'll do this. Happy to talk in Discord whenever anyone posts or answer a DM or answer a question. But again, I'm not promising to answer that within the first 30 seconds of you asking it, not because I don't love you all, but because I can't make that commitment. I shouldn't. I shouldn't have been doing it as it is. I don't think. Realistically, looking back, it was a lot of fun. I don't regret a thing. But I definitely shouldn't be doing that now that I actually have a job that pays. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. Not just a job that pays, but a job that demands. It's not something that comes naturally to me. It actually takes effort. It doesn't fly off the fingers. I was taught to read books my entire life, and this actually requires more of my body than my mind. That kind of a thing. Like, it's something that takes extra effort for me. Yeah. Ain't saying I'm weak, but like parts of my body hurt, and I don't think they'll ever stop hurting as long as I'm doing this job, and I'm fine with that. But it also means I don't have quite as much stuff in the mental tank either to do some of the other stuff. Sometimes it's hard to type. My hands hurt. And sometimes it's hard to sit down. I want to go lay down. And sometimes I just got cramp. So yeah, those demands actually for the first time are taking priority because I need to. But outside of that, again, I still keep up with my data collection and publishing it because that's where I started, and also what I think I do, that whether people recognize it or not actually provides you an alternative to having enough money to subscribe to everything. And I do it for myself as well. I actually said, like, if someone was doing this, I wouldn't have started. I don't think that's true. I think I like collecting it myself. I've loved learning Excel, learning a little bit of coding I have. I enjoy the puzzle of it, if that makes sense. Okay. Mr. Scampers, appreciate the openness and totally understand. We have notifications for your content, man. Take care of yourself first. And yeah, and again, I'm not trying to make it sound like this big cliff, because I've read other people's and seen throughout the years people declaring stuff, and I'm sure they didn't mean it this way as well, but it seems like they're taking it so. I don't think you're going to miss me for a second when I'm not around. Don't get me wrong, but I do hold myself to an openness standard. I've always tried to be incredibly clear and honest about what information I'm using to make what conclusion, and then how that works out. And from that on down, like, I've always tried to be very honest. It's kind of my guiding principle in life, let alone in fantasy. And that'll continue. And again, I appreciate you checking me out when you can, because I enjoy talking with you, not because I'm not professional, and that's fine. But I really like hearing from you, Mr. Scampers. I really enjoy the friendship me and you've made, as small as it may be for you. And Zach and Russ, and they're all different extents of how much or how long we've been in contact, but like, I enjoy all of that stuff. I don't enjoy the weekly grind, and I don't think it provides much extra value. I think it's like, I think we need a weekly grind because an industry needs a weekly grind. Not the show that we were doing, but a weekly grind of, this is a way for why I target this week. I think most weeks you already know the answers because you're paying attention to the scores and the stats and the results as well. And you might need, because you didn't watch every game, you might need just a summary, which is why one of my favorite shows was a podcast that was ever made was JMO Check doing the I've got a t-shirt, the Dynasty Blitz. He would literally just do like a 10-15 minute episode where he recapped the main points of most games, because he was aware of most games. And it was excellent. I think that's more than enough. Every now and again, there's a great point that Matt Harmon's making this week about the buildup of route percentages of one player over the last few weeks. But by its nature, that can't be every week. But he has to do it every week because he's That's how you make an industry. That's how you make money. You do a weekly thing and get paid for that weekly thing. But honestly, like 2 weeks a year, it's probably relevant. And not to spank on Matt Harmon at all, and definitely not in particular. I just don't think the weekly grind thing is for me. That's what I'm saying. And I also don't think I definitely have anything to add to that conversation. Jazz, I see you down there. I'm getting there. Curious, how did you find yourself playing Dynasty when you don't watch football? Well, it's not like I don't watch sports. I enjoy watching sports, and when football's on and I'm available, I will sit down and watch. Don't tell nobody. Where I got into Dynasty was I was looking for friends in America, and one of the ways I've always connected to people, most people who have done sports their entire lives connect with people is through sport, playing it or just remembering the game or enjoying the game and being able to talk to someone about the game. And none of the sports I enjoy, anyone here knows anything about. And so when in another hobby that I had at the time, basically for the same activity, connect to some Americans about things that we have in common, and it was particular woodworking and tools, they started a dynasty, a redraft league, and someone was out and they asked someone it was actually the commissioner of that league, asked me to take the spot. And I was like, I don't even know that sport, let alone this other game that's attached to. I've never even played fantasy. It's like, it's fine. I'll help you out. We just needed a 10th man, basically, as I now very much know that feeling in fantasy and dynasty. And I was like, you sure? I'm game. Because one, I like this guy who's a friend of mine. So the people that were in the league, it was another way of communicating. And so I ended up playing in that ESPN redraft league, and I had a hell of a lot of fun and lost badly, and I'm very competitive. And I was like, how can I get better at this, even though I don't have 20 years of, like, if it was soccer, what you call soccer, I have 20 years of knowing who's good, who's bad, and how to judge that. And with NFL football, I watched a game or two, and honestly, just didn't have a clue what's going on. Still don't. No, I actually know the game now. But I was like, how am I going to get good at this game about a game when I don't even understand the sport? You know? And so it just, a lot of people's reaction would be, I'm going to watch a lot and put myself through a crash course through understanding how to play this game. And I've learned and played a lot of sports, and I guess that was an option, but that's not what occurred to me. I was like, there's all this data on the site. Well, what I now know is called data. At the time, it was just a table on ESPN. And I was like, I don't even know what is a good point score. That was one of my first questions after we drafted. I just auto-drafted it. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, what's a good amount of points a week? I didn't even know that. I was like, this guy scored 10. That's double digits. It looks like a nice round number. Did I start the right guy there? Is that good? I hadn't even known that basis. And so one of my first quests was, what is a good score on a weekly basis for what is called a running back? And so I just copied and pasted ESPN tables through the site history to try and figure out what I was meant to be scoring at each position. And I was like, there's some gaps here, and this information is really hard to copy and paste because it's got all those symbols in, and I didn't know shit about Excel. It's just a thing that came free, like every PC at the time, my entire life. And I was like, this is hard. There must be like a website out there that's got history, right? These stats are everywhere. Everyone's talking about them in the website. ESPN's publishing them for free if you just click back through the league history. And from there, I found it was incredibly difficult just to get like a 3-year. I just wanted a 3-year history of running back scores on a weekly basis, so I could know if I'm aiming for 12 or 15 points, what's good. And it just spirals. That from there, you can tell how just asking a simple question, you can't deal with the symbols that come with the copy and paste data from ESPN, lead you to like DLF, and they lead you to like Pro Football Reference, and none of them quite have the table you want. And I was like, God damn it. So you start copying and pasting things from different places. You learn how to use Excel functions to take the information you want from those copy and pastes. Because I'm just trying to create this is a lot of work, but eventually I'll just have a list and I'll be able to answer a few basic questions. And 10 years later, you're here. Like, that's how difficult the websites, and they're still currently like that. I don't see a lot of improvement. Someone that doesn't know a lot about the game, who just wants a simple answer to what they're meant to be doing on a weekly basis, you have to put in hours and hours of work to turn that data that they make free and available into something that you can use and sort and figure out the answers that you have in particular, which again is kind of what spawned the I'll answer questions. So the next year, not to make this too long a question, was 2014. And I made the stupid decision, after the few bits of information I found, that rookies improve throughout the season. They seem to be underdrafted in drafts compared to these proven veterans. Why don't I focus a little bit on drafts? And Kelvin Benjamin's fallen. This old Beckham guy doesn't seem to be getting a lot of early round attention. So why don't I secure up the first few rounds with a quarterback? Yeah, early round quarterback. Because, they score the most. And then go through some of these wilder shots that will improve throughout the season and are a little underrated in their upside. Smart. And 2014 convinced me I was a genius and knew everything about fantasy football. 2015 showed me why that wasn't always what everyone did every year. But that boost to doing really well the second year because of the data collection I've done convinced me I was good. And so I was like, oh, I got this. And then it went badly and I had to reassess and figure it out. And it just sends you back down the rabbit hole of figuring out what's different. Why did everyone know that Kevin White was going to fail in his rookie season? Do rookies normally do nothing? And that led me to collecting rookie data, which is still, I think, the best database I put out, even though it's a free one, because it is the hardest information to find in a succinct format where you can just, again, answer your own questions, and took the most amount of work to get off the ground. Now it takes about as much work for me to update the weekly or the yearly NFL database as it does the college database. But to get to that point, it takes and it still, in my opinion, takes a bunch more grunt work to get to the point of having a usable database that you can update with the available information in a way that makes it useful anyway. So that's still the hardest thing to find, I think, outside of mine. I still keep looking for alternatives. When Dave Spaceman started doing his, I was like, great, this is starting a trend and I can quit doing all this work. And didn't quite work out that way. But yeah, that's how I got into it. And it spirals from there. Jazz Fresh, welcome back. Under the original name and the original picture. It's nice to see you. It's weird, the one night and one moment I was like, I'll just do a quick impromptu live stream, and you happen to be around. That's awesome, man. Good to see it. Anyway, I'm making a weekly value out calculation. That's why this is up. And what I've essentially done is it's not a hack, but it's also not as complicated as the yearly database, but I think it's going to do a decent enough job. I'm just basing it off a Superflex league, 12-team league with 9 starters, a baseline for positional, really only matters for quarterback. Everyone else is getting to get 108 baseline replacement. Now, the reason I can be a little more ad hoc in that is because I can actually do it on a weekly basis. Who is the 108th highest scorer that week instead of on average for a season, right? And so I actually think it will be as accurate, if not a little bit more accurate than the seasonal stuff, even though the calculation is a little, again, it's not hacky. Well, it is hacky because I made it, but it's a little less sublime, no, subtle. I don't have as many clauses and tables for it to reference before it decides what the baseline is. It's a little simpler. I just have a weekly seasonal position threshold for each position, which again, outside of quarterback, it's always what I've got the baseline set to here, which is a 12-team start 9 league. And I should be able to find some pretty interesting results. I think what I was going to talk about, besides all of this, for that podcast was just looking at why this season is a little different. For example, I don't know how it is for you, but I'm probably competitive in 3 out of my 5 leagues, and I'm really only competitive in 1, if I'm going to be honest with myself. But one of those ones is one of the 3, but I'm probably not going to win it, which hurts to say, at week 6, but I'm probably not. I'm actually still averaging above what I was averaging last year when I dominated this fucking league. And the difference is there are 2 teams ahead of me that have just eclipsed, and I mean historically, what the best team on average scores. Like I should pull up that spreadsheet. I think last year I averaged, it's a best ball league, PPR, Superflex, with bonus, with like premiums for tight end and stuff. Running back is also, rushing is also emphasized. But anyway, I essentially won that league averaging 190, I want to say 198 points a week, which is a really good average, even in best ball league in that format. And like, again, for the last 3 years, 198 would have, on average, as an average, was better or equal to what most teams who won this league had done. This year, the guy who's winning is averaging 120 points by week 6, 220 points by week 6, a clear 20 points higher than what I did last year. And I'm still averaging around the same. I'm actually, despite injuries and stuff, I'm maintaining a winning average from last year and the year before and the year before. But the guy in charge has Derrick Henry and a few other players that have boosted this league's average points per game output for the team for the number 1 spot, like over 20 points. I'm like, how many players this year are really making that big a difference? That seems to be the difference in 2024. You've got a few Derrick Henrys, and they are adding so much to a competitive roster. And I think it's Derrick Henry. Again, that's why I was making this calculation to figure out if he's really the element of that guy's team that's kicking him up so much. Because my team is still killing it, but this year, killing it isn't enough. Like, the standard's been raised, essentially. I'm like, how many? Like, there's a few unexpected and likely not value players that are just killing it this year. From a dynasty perspective, they probably won't have much value. Or from a points per game perspective, they're killing it. And I'm wondering how much of that is this season, or if it's just the way this team has looked into this season. And so I started making a value of a baseline calculation. And then I was like, you know what, while I'm here, I'll ask anyone if anyone in the Discord is around, because I got asked this morning about why no podcasts, and I'll try and talk about it a little bit. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. And again, I've made it sound like a big thing, but it all kind of happened at the same time. I realized I was not going to have the mental space to force myself to finish articles, especially on the deadlines they need them on a weekly basis, because my schedule moves around. So I told DLF I wasn't going to write that series weekly. I just don't think I can keep up with it mentally or physically. And at the same time, Zach and Russ got that fantastic new live stream to do. And I was like, it's just culminating. I think I need to step back on the weekly stuff. And then all the other stuff I said followed from there. It wasn't a big, I'm so tired. Or quitting kind of a thing. It was just, it all seems to be timing well. And for me right now, it feels like a bit of freedom to let myself. So I did. And music back on. Provide enough of what I was always doing, what I think I really have value for, so that my patrons are actually still getting their $1 a month value, because my database is still updating. I'm still doing all the legwork, collecting the data, putting out a weekly projections only once a week, but I really think the value of that is seeing everyone else's ranks, and you have to adjust by, this guy's injured when these projections were made. He wasn't, so I have to adjust for that. I actually used to do a projection model where you can insert your own ranks or update the ranks yourself. And I think now I'm being more realistic, like pretending what my current model does, and it's actually, if I do say so myself, pretty talented in that I'm taking just an average ranks model and making it produce actual projections. So I don't just average the rank. I also, from that rank, produce receiving yards, rushing yards, passing yards based on that player's history. That took some fucking work. It's very simple now. It's set up, but it took a lot of work to be able to create a sheet to do that. But here's the thing. If you drop all that complicated work, you just have an average crowd projections model. So technically, if I remade my model to just be showing the ranks, then you could update the ranks at any point with new information on Wednesday when I was at work, so I didn't do it. And getting completely new, accurate, as I would project it if I had updated it with relatively little it take a little effort, but relatively little effort. You could also make it in a way that you could override ranks. You could just rank players yourself if you wanted. I think that would be fun. But I mean, you start who you want at that point. But I could make that column in there as well. And it gave me a lot of ideas. That person in Discord asking if I could just make a model where they could update it just in case I hadn't, especially based on what's going on. And I was like, yeah, I used to have that one. But I found people preferred pretending that the projection was a thing rather than the rank. It's not. The rank is a thing. But I could definitely get back to that rank model that would be more easy to update and keep it live, because there'd be less of that. And again, it's hideously complicated to turn that rank back into an accurate or reasonable projection for everyone, from Lamar Jackson to Jamar Chase to Bijan Robinson. But you could just drop all that back-end stuff and actually have a sheet that could remain live in Google Sheets without being too burdensome. It'd be even easier for me to update it, and you could, anyone who had access to it could update it by hand typing if they didn't want to import using index match ranks from the same sources, or any sources they wanted for that matter, as news changed throughout the week for themselves. Like, that's more than possible. It'd just take a little time to build. And I haven't had the chance to do it today. Maybe tomorrow. But again, I don't know. Again, I can't promise. I don't know how much time I'm going to commit to fantasy tomorrow. Usually it would have been 10 hours. Right now, it might be none. Who knows? Maybe I'll get crazy and go out to eat with my family. See, that's the fun of it for me. Like, that was never normally going to happen. Anyway, that's the question I'm trying to answer here for myself, which I actually thought might be interesting to the podcast. Speaking of which, season basics. So what I'm going to want now is not just a points per game, but a value of a baseline column and then a rank, probably. Total. Should I put a per game value of a baseline? Maybe. Per game. And the thing about value of a baseline, or something that I learned from Adam Hanstead, or the way he likes to think of it, is that he only includes positive value games. You can ignore the negative. So we'll try that. I actually, when I was starting to make the live stream, the reason I was going to start to make it is because I was going to show you some problem solving that I had to do to make this calculation, which, especially those of you who have only been like you, Jazz, really got to know me through the Dynasty grind. The actual spreadsheet grinding is probably not what you're here for, and I appreciate that. But it's always been kind of the root of my thing. Greater than equal than 0. Yeah. Only include value gains if they were positive. Just ignore the negatives, please. Oh yeah, I need that thing back. And my stream will get decidedly fuzzy because I just asked the sheet to update. That's fun for me. And I guess value of a baseline per game would be that divided by games played. Seems too simple. Okay. Need that. I guess technically this should be in the advanced tab, but it's actually something I want to share. Oh, I do have a value of a baseline calculation, but it's only in the advanced tab, and it's much worse, if you ask me. Yeah, it's just asking to look at the value of a player 96. I think this is better. All right, save that, and then I'll turn it into static. Drew Bramley, how you doing? 12-team, half-point PPR, start 10, no premium. Traded Brooks, Hubbard, and an early second for A.J. Brown. In Dynasty, did you say? In Dynasty, did you say, good sir? That's a runaway win in Dynasty, in my personal opinion. Then traded A.J. Brown and a mid-26 first. It must be Dynasty because he got these picks for Jefferson. Thoughts? I think you highway robbed both teams. Yeah, I love both those trades. I would have said no to both with a vengeance. Huh. It's funny. I've asked it just to share Excel, so you can't see the thing I'm waving in front of it. I was just checking. That's my playlist. I pulled up a spreadsheet a few months ago of yours and realized all the data collection and hard work you put in. Well, I appreciate that, man. It is effort and it is hard work. But yeah, I'm going to stop pretending I do that because I'm putting that in for you guys. I think it has value for you guys, but only as much as you extract out of it. And the reason I do all that work is because I have questions I want to answer, like to be clear. I'd never know what the question I'm going to want to answer this week or next week is, which is why I've always kind of thrown everything in this spreadsheet. And next time I have a question, I can go and find that answer because I know I've got everything in there, which is why they've always been kind of hard to navigate for people who might not be spreadsheet friendly. But yeah, what I have found, I don't know what I found or if I found anything, but I suspect most people, especially now I've stepped back, so I'm more of I'm Googling around myself or searching DLF for answers I need real quick. I understand why a lot of my stuff doesn't hit because it doesn't have I need a start sit this week. And all of this doesn't matter when you just need to know, why did Mark Andrews not score well this week? Should I start him this week? Yeah. I get it. Or I remember getting it. See, the thing is, what I'm doing now is I just did all that work and I have to save it in a static version just to enlighten you on some of that work. Not enlightened. That makes me sound like I'm a dick. Because that's what I would always advise for you guys. If you build a spreadsheet, save a copy of it, and that's where you do your work, because you're going to change stuff or delete stuff, and you might want to go back a step. Or you might want to turn all this active data, which is what I'm doing here. All of these are live tabs. It's taking information from one tab and bringing it all into this one place. So what I'm doing now is turning that from a formula that does that into the actual number, and then I'm deleting those other tabs. What that does is take the burden off my CPU and the burden off Excel to remember the formula and that other tab. Instead, it's just one number in this place. The reason I do that is because then I can sort it and filter it and change it because I have it saved in another place, and look for my answer while knowing that all of that work is still pristine. I can redo it if trying to answer my question, I end up fucking up the sheet or changing it irrevocably from a format where I could answer another question at another time. So this is kind of what I do every time I update those weekly things. I turn it all into the static version, and then I reduce it all down to these two tabs because those are the two with the most relevant information to most people on a weekly basis. So what I'm doing here in particular is because I want to sort by this calculation I just made, value of a baseline, but I can't because it's based on this array formula that I'm grabbing from another sheet, which I'm grabbing from another sheet. So I save it in this version so I can turn them all into just numbers instead of formulas, and then suddenly I'm able to sort. Not that you care, but fill the void of silence on a live stream, Pete. That's the task at hand. Like I used to upload so much of this on that weekly update. Like this tab, I think fucking fantastic if you're just looking for quick answers. Just what happened in week 5 for Cincinnati on a weekly basis. It'll tell you what everyone did for that team, and you can change the team. But here's the thing, it creates a burden on whatever computer you're using or whatever Google sheet you're on to update all of that and keep it as a live formula. And I've just stopped doing all of that. Instead, I give you the basic information in what I hope is a user-friendly manner, just fantasy points, volume, yards, and you can search whatever you want. This is on a weekly basis. This is season total. And I just give you those two. If you want something more complicated, one, I have a YouTube video about how to build that. Or you could ask, I guess, but I think trying to create these tabs for people live, I was just trying to create something that's actually a website. And I don't have a website. Actually, I do. I just never built or had someone build the tools on that website. I just have the data to do it with. Anyway, yeah, where was I? Value of a baseline. Who's the most valuable player this year? Alvin Kamara, not Derrick Henry. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just playing the season out. You know, whoever's got Alvin Kamara or Derrick Henry is a very high-scoring player, and they're scoring 12, 13 points of that very small value pool, that 500 points a year that we're all fighting for to outscore each other in a 12-team standard PPR league. And it's coming from Kamara, Henry, Godwin, and Chase. Interesting. He's the next one. And there's only 7 players who are scoring double-digit points who have actually played, 5 or 6 games. There's also Kenneth Walker, who's played 4 games. He's in double digits. Rashee Rice, he was only in 3 games, but he is a double-digit points per game value of a baseline leader. Joe Mixon, he just came back. Yeah, I tried to trade for him just before on that winning team. Didn't work. AJ Brown's killing it this year as well on a per-game basis. But again, once you get down to 2 games, it's a little suspect. So the real game changers this year, Barkley, Chase, Godwin, Henry, Kamara. And I bet if I check that team in my league that's redefining what a high score is, I know he has Henry. I bet he has another one of these players. That's what my bet is. That's what's going on this year. And I think if I research this for 2023 or 22, I think there will be fewer, especially by week 6, scoring double-digit per game value of a baselines, playing 5 or 6 games. I think there would be fewer. I think that's what's going on this year. I mean, Collins is kind of there too. He played 5. Anyway, I'm going to go check that guy's team out. I think I'm right. I think this season's just a little different. We were right about the old running backs. It was hard to go into them on a second year. Like we still got one more year of the 2011 class really being dominant. But yeah, it's definitely what's going on this year again. Where is he? Yeah, he's got Henry. He's got Collins. He's got Joe Mixon. I bet there's someone else there. It feels like he's got a 4th. So of the 5, 6, maybe 7 players providing that excessive amount of value on a weekly basis while still playing over 5 games, he's got 3 of them. His team looks like shit from a dynasty perspective, but the 3 that he's got are dominating. He's also it's not shit. He's got you've got Collins, you're doing pretty well in dynasty, but he's also got Cup, who sucked this year for his points, but it's Cup. Aaron Jones, who I tried to trade for this offseason, he wasn't the answer, but he was good enough. He's been good enough this season. But yeah, he's got 3 of those 5 guys. That's what it is. I'm really interested. I might go back and resave this with the 2023 players in here. Could possibly do that. but not by week 6. I'd have to resave everything. But yeah, well, that's relieving. Got Malik Neighbors in there. This is something I've been looking at just to check. And again, not going to do the receipt thing at all this year, as much as I ever did. But our ranks look fantastic from this preseason. Even worthy of a Dundee. Pretty good. And we're kind of right about these running backs. Lots of highly useful, utilitarian running backs with opportunity opening up and them scoring some points, but no, like Bijan Robinson, no Gibbses. Yeah, it's kind of exactly what we expected. And Brock Bowers. I mean, everyone got that right. But it's nice when everyone's right about something, we're all actually right. Yeah, Bowers, dang. Rewriting what a tight end is. Team opportunity share. I would hope I've got that in the glossary, but it's a good question. That is actually the right question. How do you calculate something? Because there are way too many ways to calculate something that create these marginal differences that almost no one thinks about. Now, what mine's meant to be is the percentage of team touches minus QB rushing attempts. That's what I've got in the glossary. So all touches will be receptions and rushing attempts outside of quarterback rushing attempts. You pull all those, and then you take the player's number of touches and divide the one by the other. That's meant to be how my opportunity share is calculated. I can find out for sure, though. By looking back at the live one, I might have some differences between the live and the weekly, to be fair. Because it's hard to explain how sometimes it can just be incredibly easier, frankly, to calculate something in a uniquely different way from one database to the other, just by the way the data lines up or the way the collection has to happen, or has to happen for me in Excel. All right, here's a live one. Oh, you can't see that. Let me present share screen, share the live one. Yeah, that one. Yeah, here's a live one again. Opportunity share. Where do I have that? Right here. So what I'm here is summing AX divided by games. I'm doing it on a per game basis. That's clear. Yeah, that glossary is wrong. I'm looking at okay. Just hide this. What I'm doing, this team tab used to be shared and it's not anymore. But what my opportunity share is doing is going on, that's what this says here. It's going on looking for the team score in M, which is, attempts per game. And attempts per game is all attempts divided by game. And all attempts is rushing attempts plus pass attempts. And those rushing attempts are not nixing the quarterback rushing attempts at all. Okay, so what I'm doing is summarizing the team's rushing attempts and the team's passing attempts into one value. That's right here. So let's see. And then dividing it by the number of games they've played. So, for example, in current week, Kansas City has passed or rushed the ball 310 times, divided by, how many games they've played, 5, according to my database as it's currently updated, creates 62 rushing attempts. And then what it's doing is looking up the sum of the players' total attempts, dividing it by the number of games they've played. And let me just confirm that AX would be... Sorry, it's not a stat I look at a lot, so I don't know off the top of my head. Okay, mistake made. So yeah, the total number of attempts is literally the sum total of their passing attempts, rushing attempts, and targets. And again, what's this? Got some errors. Anyway, to stretch this, I'm not removing quarterback rushing attempts, which would be an interesting way, and it has been apparently in the past, an interesting way of calculating it. But in my seasonal tab in my weekly database, it's literally on a per game basis, dividing their total touches of the ball by the team's number of attempts per game, rushing attempts and passing attempts. That's how that one's being calculated. It says on average sometimes, but the opportunity scorers per game. It says average or per game, opportunity scorers per game. So if a player has only played 2 games, but like not Nico, who do we say? Who do we say are playing 2 games? Anyway, then their touches in those games will be divided against the team's average this season, which is a little hinky, but it's creating a pretty fair expectation for when he plays, he's getting that proportion of their average attempts. I should change that in the glossary too. It's the problem with having a glossary that tries to work for all databases. Sorry, Drew, what was that? Competing team, would you take the 2025 101 for Nico Collins? 101? I don't know this class, but on average, yes. Yeah. Assuming there is a 101 worth having, and you could check out Devi content just to make sure of that. If it's kind of a flat top this year, which it could be, that's happened in years, then no. But if there's a really good, really you feel there's a really strong 101, yeah, Nico Collins for the 101 would be good for a building team, more than a competitive team, obviously. But I think in general that'd be fair value. Yeah. Noah Sanders, and another question: how much should we value weekly matchup? It's not a question I have an exact answer for, but it's a good one. Tends not to matter too much in Dynasty as you'll always start Jamar Chase in a bad matchup of Brandon Ayuk in a good matchup. I think part of that is the format. If it's best ball, obviously it doesn't matter. But it's also about number of teams in a lineup, how much the variance and hitting the ceiling of your potential points per game matters. I think John Hogue, don't tell him I said it, has a decent point that we should probably be more willing to stream matchups in Dynasty. But matchups are highly volatile, hard to predict. You would have to get someone you feel, or you would have to become someone you feel fairly confident in the way you predict matchups by position. How much should we value weekly matchups? I think they have a lot of value, especially by the time we get to right now. Weekly matchups have a lot to say, because we have 6 weeks worth of data on defenses. They are about to shift, literally, because defenses will shift to their norms. But for example, this one died. Okay. I would have to look in the live version, which would be awkward. But someone in my Discord is doing is looking at the points per game adjusted to schedule. Different defenses are allowing to each position. Now, there are sites for this. 4for4 does a good adjusted fantasy points allowed stat, which I include in my projections. to show you how they rank versus the rest of the league in terms of points allowed to each position adjusted for the schedule. It's really interesting. Rank is a really interesting stat. Someone in my Discord does it for free for everyone in the Discord in a simple table looking at matchups. I think you should weight that because that guy in my Discord and 4for4 both have been doing it consistently, and it shows to have some utility, mostly in the extremes though. And ideally, you only want to adjust for it strongly when you have a player with a really good matchup. It's not like guy who never does anything at tight end is suddenly facing a weak tight end team. I should definitely start him. But if you have Brock Bowers and Travis Kelce this year, and Brock Bowers is going up against a good tight end matchup, and Travis Kelce is going up a bad one, that makes the decision slightly easier. Although this year it might be easy anyway. But you see what I mean? You should weight somewhat towards it with no exact percentage to offer you. But I would not wholesale change my decision. DFS, in the extreme, attempts to do some of that. I think that's why a lot of people make money on DFS, because they know they're better at that, and they also know to not do that. I think that's somewhat, not that it's not real, there's some realness to it, but I think it's a lot of snake oil sold to a lot of us rubes that again end up being the ones that give the money to the people who are successful at making, a poker-like living at fantasy. It's not that you shouldn't consider it. I don't think you should drastically change your decisions. And on DFS, maybe there's a different conversation to be had. I do think it's useful, but I would look at on a simpler, not a simple makes it sound like not good, but I think we make things too complicated constantly, especially with data collection. I think something like the guy in my Discord is doing, or PFF, or 4for4. Again, 4for4 is a huge, most accurate company in projections ever. And they're essentially doing a very simple thing with adjusted fantasy points allowed. Adjusting for if you face 10 Brock Bowers in a row, the points you've allowed to the tight end position are a little different than if you faced 10 Greg DeLuches, So they adjust for that a little bit and then just do an outright how many points have you allowed by position per matchup. And the guy in my Discord does percentage based on an average matchup, I believe, but it is schedule adjusted. Something like that is not, it might sound complicated because I'm terrible at explaining things, but it's a relatively simple way of looking at it. And I think he's going to get you as much value as you possibly reasonably hope to get from matchups. But yeah, John Hogue's remarkably good at doing it at quarterback, which is how he emphasizes that people should be more willing to do it in Dynasty. I think Daddy's home, Mike, he's really good at doing it in general, especially for wide receivers. I've seen him have a lot of success with tight end matchups, actually. And again, some people have a better or worse instinct, but I think it comes down to instinct at a certain point, which is why for most of it, it's kind of a rubish science. But in extreme cases, when you have choice between two decent players, one in a good, one in a bad matchup, sure, wait towards the matchup. Especially in extreme situations. I remember, 2 years ago, the Browns just couldn't defend the tight end position. And something Chris Harris, old ESPN analyst who now does his own thing, still pretty interesting guy to listen to. He always talks about how a defense can take away a tight end, any tight end pretty much, if they want to. Something about scheme and the way you line up. And I mean, Travis Kelce might be a different kettle of fish in prime last year, but for most of the time, defenses can wait towards guarding that position or not. So sometimes you'll just catch teams who are not, and so allowing more points to that position in general. Anyway, that's a random old reference, but if you pick up an interesting note, I tend to hold on to it. That's my best answer for it, Noah. Sorry, it's not crisp and direct and yes, a lot, or no at all. It's consider it, but I wouldn't overweight it, especially if it's not a player who typically would be starting it. Yeah, for DFS, I think and again, I'm not a DFS bro. Should probably ask them. I think it's a little bit of rube science. It's true, but I think most of us who get caught up in it too much are going to be giving our money away to those who have the skill, talent, the experience to do it when necessary or accurately, if we go too far with it. However, based on the DFS, and I've consumed a lot of that like everyone else, A lot of good players seem to weight it very heavily. But the reason I say Rube stat or Rube science is because I think if we try to do it too heavily, more often than not, we're going to fail. I think where that comes in is where you're looking for high variance returns. And there's a very specific gambling situation where you would be doing that. And the typical way of looking at that is GPP versus cash, for example. But I think even that is too simplistic. Knowing when to go all in on a poker hand versus not, there's actually a little bit more to it than high stakes, low reward kind of a thing. And again, I think for most of us, for me, for definite, it's going to be a Rube science. I'm going to get caught out by it more than I'm going to help by it, which is why I shouldn't go for contexts or situations or contests that are more high variance. And why cash is always going to be a little bit more stable for us regular Joes or regular James, just trying to play DFS for fun and maybe acquire a little extra cash over the season. Those high variance tournaments, you have to max entry and really understand start percentage and stuff like that. I think you're going to have to, at some point, have a talent or an understanding or a source for that when it comes to matchups, because it's not because they do it more accurately, because I think it's mostly an inaccurate science. That's what I'm saying. But you're going to have to make the gamble on that relatively inaccurate thing being accurate right now for this start for this week because of the upside. And it becomes this question about how to gamble rather than the football stat, because the football stat is highly unreliable. It's probably not going to be right. It's kind of going to be inaccurate, and it's mostly snake oil outside of that very simplistic view where you already have a pretty decent scoring player going into a good matchup. And even they could underperform because, again, it's mostly snake oil. So it's more of a question. That stuff comes into when you combine it with a deep and sure knowledge of gambling rather than fantasy. If that makes sense. I don't think it's a fantasy question as much as it's a high variance gambling question. Because from a fantasy point of view, it's not much to rely on. But since you're asking for DFS, I'm not going to tell you, so ignore it. There's definitely a nature to where you will have to, high enough stakes, have a better understanding of it for that. But for Dynasty, for redraft, mostly outside of that simplistic kind of, the Browns versus Titans this year. It's just a thing. And Travis Kelce's going up, or Mark Andrews, or whatever. Outside of that, for us, mostly junk. But I'm not dismissing it, especially for DFS. It's probably going to come into a how to gamble thing, which I have no expertise in whatsoever. Paxman, anyone else unable to watch video due to buffering, but lives work fine? Huh. I would, I'm not sure what you're saying here. I would be very surprised if my video quality tonight wasn't terrible. One, I have this sheet open. Two, I'm listening to music. And three, my setup and where my internet is has always been a little dodgy. I'd have to turn everything off, get everyone else off the internet, wait for a peak time, and to actually get a half decent streaming quality. I'm not doing that tonight or probably ever again because I'm not investing that much effort in it anymore. Hopefully, I'm hopeful though that despite buffering and low video quality, my response isn't immediate but comes through eventually. You know what I mean? But again, I plan to record a podcast where I highlight most of the stuff. This isn't meant to be a live stream me answering, although I'm happy to, questions about Dynasty since I haven't been doing it regularly. Some pent up questions might exist. I was mostly just here because someone in Discord asked me about what's going on, so I want to provide some way tonight for them to get some answers, maybe ask some questions if they were around, and also just see some of you guys that I haven't seen in a while. Yeah, yeah. And like I say, this guy in my league, that again, he's redefining what a high score is on a weekly basis. He doesn't have Henry and Kamara, which would be the god pairing right there. Two running backs. But it's Henry Collins in those 5 games he's played, even that damn game doesn't matter. And he's combining it with who's the third one? can't see it off the top of my head. Joe Mixon, yeah. It's 3 of the 5 you really need this year, apparently. It's one of those annoying years where, like, I liked all those players, but I had no way of emphasizing, "Oh, obviously you go out and get Henry and, Kamara." I would have said, "Yeah, if you were a competitive team, or we'll wait till now and would be actively trading for them." But to your point, everyone that's got them isn't in a giving up points per game mood. They're trying to win this year, as they should. Godwin might have been someone I should have highlighted. If Jamar Chase is another one, but, like, who would have said, no, don't trade for Jamar Chase specifically in Dynasty right now? You know, it's not really. But Godwin could have been more available. And I think I think I mentioned Evans, who's been doing fine, but nowhere near the advantage that Godwin's providing. Yeah. Diggs is up here, by the way. Well, not up there, but he's like 15th in total value provided to teams that are starting him. And I have him in that league. It's him and a few of the wide receivers still keeping me competitive shape. And Brees Hall. Yeah. Evans isn't too bad, to be fair. 21st total value offered this season. Garrett Wilson, nice. 17th. And look at that. George Kittle, not dead. The only tight end in the top 25, and he's ranked 23rd overall in value added to a team this season. Nice. You, my George Kittle love would pay off again, to be fair. Again, it pays off every year. But safe flowers. Who knows? I've I was thinking about this the other day. Not that this is a well thought out point. I think one of my biggest misses the last 2 years is Bijan Robinson. Not that he's not great and doing well. Like he's scored 35 points over value, but it's only like 5 per game above the baseline. It's fine. He's ranked 32nd overall in the entire NFL. No one's sad to have Bijan Robinson, but I really thought, and that snowballs into why I wasn't specifically heavy on offering before the season offers on those. I felt Bijan Robinson really come in, have that rookie season to remind us what rookies could do, and just storm through this year as well. He's been good, but he hasn't done a Zeke. He hasn't done a Barkley his rookie year. And I think I'm not that I did. Everyone had him one. I don't regret anywhere I took him. I think his value's fine. But I kind of miss the overall effect he would have. I thought it was going to be more substantial. As it is, the other guy I've always said to get, Aaron Jones, has been doing just about as much for you, if not more, than Bijan Robinson this season in the second. Yeah, it feels like I'm gonna miss the usual vocabulary for these things doesn't work in practice. If we can step away from the fantasy content machine for a second, not like I missed. It's not even miscalculation. It's not like we overspent or overbought or Bijan Robinson's not good. But like was an overemphasis because he was young and good. Whereas again, I was getting Aaron Jones seconds this offseason. Joe Mixon's was available for that. Derrick Henry was incredibly easy to add this year, even though I didn't see this coming because there were a few young running backs, specifically Bijan Robinson. That's not where I thought we should go heavily in Dynasty. Whereas trading Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall into any of those old guys plus would have been incredible boom. And normally I'm there. Normally I'm right there in Dynasty. But Bijan Robinson in particular gave me pause. I really thought he would not rewrite, but feel like he was rewriting running back position last year. And he did not. And he isn't this year either. So it's not a miss. It's definitely not a hit. And at that value in Dynasty, even accurately ranked as rookies or whatever else, that feels like the type of miss we should be concerned with rather than Brian Robinson too low, Ryan Thomas too low. Like that doesn't, whatever. As a first round Dynasty, first round NFL wide receiver, we only 2 drafted. Um, and yeah, some people are like letting him go to the second or the late first, me to scoop up, me and you guys to scoop up the miss. But I don't think it's as important as Sean Robinson being right, but not right enough. That makes sense. It's like JSN, he's not been wrong, but he's wrong enough that it was a miss. And those are actually more concerning to me, I think. Have a longer term, more widening impact. You could have won this year by going the exact opposite way. Even if you weren't wrong for doing it, could have won and had extra value by going the opposite way, even though it wasn't wrong to go in on them. Harrison this year, same thing. I mean, he's been great. Better than JSN was to this point in his rookie season. Looks like he's going to have a brighter future. But if you've gone the entirely opposite way, so much better in Dynasty. You know what I mean? And broadly, if you did it right. You did it right. Like this guy who got Jefferson through snowball trading through AJ Brown to Jefferson, so much better effect than whatever parcel of potential he gave away at the start. That seems to me to be more clean Dynasty. And then holding on to Garrett Wilson and finally getting it really right this year, like trading that pick for Godwin and a first 2 years ago, it's still living the dream, right? Rookie misses suck because sometimes it hits and still misses. That's what I'm saying. I have Henry and Kamara in the league. I'm 9-3. Those 3 losses were like surprising, right? Yeah. I'm in one of those things where I can't even look up leagues here because like good teams are winning when those outlandish scores don't happen for anyone else. But I've got a losing record because those outlandish scores, those 5 or 6 players are scattered into not scattered, they're concentrated. Everyone seems to come up against me with them. They're just too much. Maybe that'll even out. Not even out. That's where I have to go look at 22 and 23 to see if this is kind of a trend evens out. If so, you should toe the line if you have a decent team that's not hitting. And if not, trade for Henry and Kamara or just get the fuck out of the season, bro. Where's touchdown regression? That might give a clue. Well, yeah, like Henry and Kamara are both scoring a touchdown in less than 100 yards each right now. I mean, Henry, it's ridiculous. Every 82 yards, he scores a touchdown. The average is 150 yards. And if you don't remember, Godwin, not so much. He's right in there. I mean, that doesn't mean Henry could do that all the way to the end of the season. Don't get me wrong. But if you're looking for something to change, touchdown regression is one of the most common, right? And the most reliable. And both of those guys should start scoring touchdowns less often. I don't know. I believe it. I don't know if they believe they will. And Kyron Walker and Kyron Williams and Kenneth Walker are the only, also both scoring more. Kyron Williams has a touchdown every 59 yards. And yeah, whatever. Kenneth Walker has a touchdown every 70 yards. Running backs are just highly touchdown efficient to start this year. Does that slow down? Again, the average is like, for running backs, I think it's a little lower than that. It's like 120 yards. I have to go look at the average table again, but those are definitely low. Number of yards per touchdown. Hang on. Does that change? Yeah, like concerningly. They're all 40 or 50%, 60% above their average. Brian Robinson. Across the board, running backs are outscoring. And that might just be the NFL reacting to last season when receiving, again, the last couple of years when receiving was kicking ass. So, yeah, not necessarily, it's not definitely going to stop. This might be a defense offensive shift because of what's been happening the last couple of years. We'd have to ask someone who works it's like Zach. But yeah, there's a thing here where, yep, wide receivers are all within average. in terms of their touchdowns. In fact, several like CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, who does not normally do that, DK Metcalf are getting more yards per touchdown. In other words, scoring touchdowns less often than you would expect. And I'm sure that's definitely what's going on with tight ends, right? No, not so much. They're still they tend to be more efficient with tight ends in general, but not so much. It's specifically wide receivers versus running backs. Well, the running backs, the top running backs are all outkicking their coverage, except for Aaron Jones. He should have more touchdowns. Jordan Mason too, but there's been a split role. Yeah, before that, it was Christian McCaffrey. So, well, Josh Jacobs should have twice the number of touchdowns he has right now. Najee Harris, but Najee Harris. We're just grateful for what he did. Austin Eckler, who I thought would do more this year. But yeah, mostly at the top, all of these guys, way more touchdowns than they should have, like 50 or 60%. Whereas the wide receivers, they're not under kicking. It's kind of right there on the average, 30 to 40% over, or, this is all normal. That's all normal. Normal. These are slightly under. We really need to get to 50. That's one extra touchdown over 6 games. I don't think that's excessive. Anyway, I'm just thinking out loud. All right. Yeah, that's about me. I made my value of a best calculation. I'm going to look into that more. I do think I'm going to make this podcast tomorrow because I have tomorrow off as well. 2 days in a row. That's rest. Okay. I'm going to look at this a little more in depth and include it as like a segment. When I make a podcast tomorrow, maybe, probably, about what's going on and what my patrons can expect. That's pretty much what I've always been doing for them, but it will be slightly different this season. Again, 6 weeks in, I'm only making that. I really meant to make that week one. I'm really giving myself a little leeway. But thanks. It's great to see something. Joanna, I didn't think I'd get to see you. You are not using the same profile picture, unlike Genesis Fresh, who I seem to remember cycle through hers a little bit as well. Where have you been? Watch the start, man. Actually, watch about 10 minutes in. Yeah, I'm doing great. To be clear, like I'm very happy. I was very happy making all that content for you all for so long. Not that you've all been here the entire time. Too long didn't read version. Zach and Russ are going off to do that fantasy streams live on Wednesdays, and instead of trying to create another day where me and Zach could do another live stream, it coincided with me feeling overburdened to meet weekly deadlines when I now have a job that I work 55 hours on average a week. And it just felt like a good time to step away from weekly demanded schedules. I'm still doing all my data collection. I still answer everything everyone sends me. And I still want to do a little bit more, but I'm allowing myself to step back as far as I'm comfortable so I can step in again. And again, too long didn't read. I don't think the weekly value is where I'm at. I like the stuff I get right in advance. And the rest of it was me trying to keep up with an industry that continues to try and increase and get better. And it's just a losing game. And so I still want to do podcasts. I still want to do live streams. I'm doing some content for someone else this week. That's why I'm doing this show. Someone asked in Discord. Someone reached out to me to do something for them for their weekly series. I'm going to do that. And I was like, now's a good time to start stepping back in a little bit. So hence this random live stream, because some people in my Discord said they were around. But that's what's happening. The Dynasty Grind ended because it's been improved upon. It's now a Fantasy Cares stream with both Zach and Rush, and you should definitely check that out because they were the best part of the Dynasty Grind anyway. And I took that time to step back as far as I was comfortable. I'm not doing my weekly article for DLF, although I am doing my ranks, and I still, if I write one off, I will send it to them So in the hope they will publish it, and they said they will definitely be into that. And I can't not stand. It was all there was actually an emotional effect to putting that burden on myself to create publishable quality content. I think the stuff in my articles and the stuff I am writing and understand is still high enough quality to have value. But because of my own personal struggles, I have to not fact check, spell check every word and every name. And even in a 1,000-word article, and backwards and forwards, it took me an extra 2 hours to the point that I was writing those weekly articles at 3 a.m., realizing I had to be up in 2 hours for an hour for a job that actually physically demands that I not be tired, as opposed to previously when I'd go to work on 1 hour's sleep and feel fine. I can't do this job like that. And also, I don't want to because I don't want to lose the job. Because it's actually paying for my family. First time I've been doing that in a while. My bills and stuff. So yeah, it all kind of coincided to stepping back. Dynasty Grind was ending, either way, mainly because of my schedule. But improved upon with Zach and Wes doing their own streams, Fantasy Cares. And I decided also to step back from my weekly content. So you're just seeing less of me. I'm also allowing myself to feel less burden. It seems like you're all on a burden, but I have always put like 10 hours a day worth of pressure on myself to check in with Twitter, check in with Discord, check in with all places that anyone could want something or need something. And I'm just allowing myself not to, because no one else is demanding it. Let's face it, I am not in demand, never was. I was demanding it of myself, and I'm allowing myself not to. So I'm still keeping up with all my data collection the same way I always was, but the weekly content that no one was really demanding from me anyway, I'm allowing myself to not demand it of myself for a change. And so I'm still around, still here, still doing stuff. But I'm really an set you up for the season kind of a guy. I'm not going to be an in-season grinder. The off-season is where most of my stuff had any value. Hopefully the data sheets are still helpful to some people, whoever ever found them useful. But yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I've gone, where I've gotten to, as it were. Yeah, I do miss seeing Zach and Russ every week. I miss seeing you all every week. Don't get me wrong; it's not been all great, but it has been honestly a relief, or I would have come back and meet. I was just doing too much for no reason. Again, no one was really asking me to. And some part of me was just like, if you work hard enough, I'll what? I don't even know what I was aiming for. I don't want to be an influencer. I don't really want to work full time for PFF or DLF, or I don't really want to work full time for any of them. I never put the time into building my own website or creating my own thing. I don't really want to be just another source demanding your attention. I just wanted to be useful in the Dynasty community, and I feel I can do that without demanding I pretend I'm an entire website by myself. You know what I mean? And I do want to get a little more regular because I miss talking to you, Joe. I miss talking to everyone. But for now, I'm trying to allow myself to see as much slack as I can allow myself. So far, it's been good, and I'm going to start stepping back in a little bit. The 93 Henry Kamara team, I have week 3 head-to-head loss where Tyreek, Flowers, Ridley combined for 12.2 points. Still beat the median. Still beat the median outcome. Yeah, they're killers this week, man. Lost the next week combo of those three with 11.7 points and minus 0.9 from Carson Steele. Yeah, it's just your need to improve some of your depth, I guess, which is not a thing I would normally say in Dynasty. There is cheap depth there, to be fair. You could definitely improve on a Carson Steele, so relatively little. But yeah, your team's probably not going to need you to, but it'll be good. And I've been without Puka all year, too. Yeah, I was reading likely return for, who was it? Someone at Cup. Yeah, I was reading about whether he's likely going to return. The fact that they didn't put him on IR suggests he was, but like he might come back in week 7. It would be hard to start him. And then if he doesn't perform, you wait until week 8. Like, they may as well put him on IR at this point. But yeah, Puka's loss has been felt as well. Yeah. Well, like I say, guys, being especially great to see you, Joe, you, JC Troller, and you, Jazz, especially familiar faces that I honestly do miss talking to. Don't get me wrong. I've always tried to be honest, and I meant it every week when I said that was my fun. It was my happy place. I really do, and I still want to keep doing that stuff. Just kind of have to slow down on the demands for myself because it's not demands you honestly make. It's demands I was making of myself, and it was stupid. And yeah, the Dynasty Grind ended with 2 co-hosts are gone. And I can't commit to a weekly schedule. I was trying to, as long as my friends was, there. I didn't want to disappoint them. But now they've got something even better going on that you can all check out as well. So you're not even, you guys aren't even being let down. Like, I don't even have to really commit to that. So yeah, I want myself not to for a second. Trying to figure out how to trade him, but I just can't. Ooh, Carson Steele? ETN. Yeah, you got to hold on to ETN right now. Unless, no. I was going to say find a building team who might value the young running back who will back at some point. But they would want a lower value for him. You just got to put him on the bench and set him as a loss right now. I don't think that's the way you value crime this year. That much of a winning team, you're looking at your picks. The less value because they're going to be in the bottom half of the rounds anyway. That's what a win now team does. Trade your first for a young good player, if you can, by adding an ETN maybe. Or trade your seconds freely for veteran players that no one else is going to want after the season, and they're not winning as much as you, so they will be more interested. That would kind of be not the exact trade, but the type of thing obviously we'll all be trying to do in that situation. I appreciate you too, Noah. Thanks very much. Oh, trading Mahomes. Yeah, Mahomes is an option this year. Just realize Mahomes in the quarterback position will bounce back. But with that much of a winning team, most of that bullshit I would normally spout is irrelevant. Winning is a rarer proposition than I still think most people will need to give it credit for, no matter how good you are, how often you win. Honestly, you've got a 1 in 12 chance every year, and a league can always implode. So if you have a chance to win, you should never underrate it and be less worried about, well, Mahomes will bounce back or ETN will bounce back. The only thing with ETN is I don't think you get anything from them except from a building team with that insight, and they're rare. Let's face it. Unless you're in a really sharp league where someone's looking for kind of offbeat value gains for next year, you're probably not going to find them. It's probably just best to keep them. Whereas Mahomes, you're right, might be the better angle to do that. You get out of Baker Mayfield, no one wants, but your points per game isn't going to drop. For Mahomes plus, the moon, or at least something definitely that helps secure you this win this year, that's where your focus should be. That's where my focus should be. Yeah, that's rough. Anyway, well, sorry to stream and leave, but I'm down it. Again, I hope to see you all more regularly. In the meantime, seriously, check out Tacit Assassin, check out Zach Reed and Dynasty Outhouse stream. You'll see me around there. I think it's an improvement, and it's allowed me to step back a little bit more than maybe I would have anyway. Because I already know you guys are being served well by that stream in particular. And so I'm not leaving you in the complete lurch, if you know what I mean, from a live stream point of view. But yeah, I'm around. You still contact me. I'm just not going to be weekly, definitely at a certain time and place. But I will still respond to all messages, as always. Yeah, good to see you all again. I'll see you when I see you. That's kind of the point. It's for fun. Okay, it'll be a random treat for me when I get to talk to you all. One I do look forward to. Thanks very much.